Hello, this is Bill Strand, your host for the Reptile Entrepreneur video podcast. Today, I'd like to introduce you to Jim Rybost of Sunset Chameleons, who has created the Log Lunch. The Log Lunch is a special feeder designed for chameleons. And what you do is you put the insects inside here, they crawl up the back, and the movement attracts the chameleon's attention, and the chameleon comes in for dinner. Now, the chameleon feeder run cup has been around for a while. It was originally introduced to the chameleon community in the January 2003 edition of the Chameleons e-zine. It was originally conceived of because this chap right there needed to find a way to get import chameleons to eat from a dish, and just the standard dish wasn't doing it. The insects would just stay still, and especially the wild-caught chameleons wouldn't know that that was good to eat. So I needed something that would keep the insects moving, and this was a very good solution. Since that time, this design has gone through many iterations, usually using milk jugs, water jugs, or Sunny Delight bottles. But it wasn't until Nick Barta from Full Throttle Feeders came up with a design that was actually classy, and it looked like it had a place inside of a cage that you cared about. And Jim shared that this was the inspiration for him to take it a step further and add his artistry to try to make it look more natural. And in a move that will confuse most of the business people here who thinks that we all need to hate each other, once Nick found out what was going on, he actually called Jim up and helped Jim start the business, get it up off the ground, and give him advice. And they have been very good friends ever since. And as the host of the Reptile Entrepreneur podcast, where my goal is to create a better community within the reptile businesses, I feel I could just end the episode right now and say, there's your lesson, folks. Let's try to be better. It can happen. But of course, we do have a lot to learn about Jim's business. But I would like to take this moment to say thank you, Nick, for showing us how things can be. The end result of Jim's efforts is the Log Lunch, which is actually made from a length of PVC pipe. But in the artist's hands, it becomes so much more. You attach the Log Lunch to your cage using the mounting pins. You put the insects in from the top or from the front. They crawl up, the chameleons see the movement and come in for dinner. And sometimes they just pony right up to the table and make themselves at home. I was able to interview Jim about how he makes the products and ask him questions about what it's like to do a startup in the reptile community. But before we get into the interview, I'd like to give you a behind-the-scenes tour so you have a context for what we're talking about. One look around Jim's building, and you can imagine the number of soon-to-be-happy chameleons. Jim has created a wide variety of log types and colors. Each is a unique work of art. They are individually carved, textured, and painted, so no two are alike. And when you place an order, do not be surprised if you get a call from Jim giving you options so you can have the one that is to your liking. Is there a certain color wood type that goes with your cage's decor? Would you like the smaller version or the larger? Do you have a special needs chameleon? And I can tell you, after talking to Jim, I do not think we are anywhere near the end of Jim's ideas. Each Log Lunch starts as a length of white PVC piping to which Jim evaluates and sculpts out the shape he feels the feeder wants to be. From the front opening to the top shape to the bark texture, each one gets its own personality. Although it seems so simple to get a length of PVC and carve something, that's like saying painting is just putting pigment on paper. It requires a skilled hand to remove the artificial pipe to reveal the log inside. I have seen PVC piping before. I've worked with it extensively. I never knew that there was a log inside waiting to be set free. Of course, the painting process is just as individual, with hand-applied strokes and highlights. Now, as much as I want to showcase the beauty of what Jim produces, this is a show for entrepreneurs. And the one thing that's become obvious by my introduction is that Jim is selling art. Each product takes over an hour of his time to make. And this is an example of a product that takes an enormous amount of time from the owner to make, and it's exceedingly difficult to replace that. Many of us find ourselves faced with the challenges of how do we scale up our business when we can't add hours to the day and we can't duplicate ourselves. And so I invite you to watch this episode where Jim and I talk about what it's like to do a startup in the reptile community, but also what do you do to scale up a business when you are such an important part of each product that goes out? This is a question many of us face when it's time to grow. How do we grow so we make sure it's still what we want to do? So please, join me in welcoming Jim to the Reptile Entrepreneur Podcast, and let's talk about being a startup and also to listen in on some of the challenges we might face when we have to scale up the business. When we scale up, is it still the business we want to be part of? Please join me for the interview with Jim Rybost of Sunset Chameleons, where we ponder these questions. Hello, reptile entrepreneurs. This is Bill Strand, your host, and today I have on Jim Rybost. Jim, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Jim, you are from Sunset Chameleons, and
Yes.
You have created a product called Log Lunch.
That's right.
And explain what Log Lunch is.
Well, the log lunch basically is it's a feeder that hangs in your enclosure of your. They were designed for chameleons at this point, but I know that they could work for many different types of lizards and reptiles. They hang in your enclosure. They look natural, and they keep your bugs contained, so your bugs aren't just freewheeling out in the out in the enclosure. And one thing that I found that it helps with is keeping track of how many insects your chameleon's eating during the day. So, in the past, you would have to just look around the enclosure and try to count how many bugs you had left. And now you don't have to do that.
Now, this product, these feeder run cups have been around for a while. What was it that you saw in it and said, something needs to be done?
Well, what I was looking for personally when I first got into chameleons, and I started looking just like everybody else, I think, does. I started looking at the forums and just reading as much as I could to try to collect all this information. And I saw feeders out there that people were making with milk jugs, lunch meat containers, really basic stuff, but they worked. And I actually made one myself. I had ham lunch meat containers in all of my chameleon enclosures at one point, and then they got upgraded from that. I really wanted something that looked natural, something that didn't look like a piece of plastic, something that didn't look out of place in an enclosure, something that would be appealing, but still serve a purpose with the screen in it to be able to feed the insects.
So at what point did you decide, hey, I can do something about this?
Well, I started watching videos on YouTube, and I'm the type I could sit down and spend hours on YouTube. That's how I gather a lot of my information. I'm a visual learner. So I started watching these videos, and my goal was to create something that looked like a log. So I just started scouring the internet and finding out how could you make something that looks like a log. And I stumbled on this video with a guy that was making artificial logs out of PVC pipe for aquariums. And I watched the videos several times. I was enthralled with it. I just watched it over and over. And the wheels started kicking around in my head, and I was thinking, I think I could do this. So I decided to go out and get some pipe, and I have a retaining wall in my backyard. I built this 2x4 sticking off of the retaining wall to be able to carve on. And that's where I just started practicing and learning how to make one.
All right. Well, let's take a look at one of these. I happen to have one right here. And let's get the tape off. Now, this is an impressive work of art. This
Thank you.
looks natural, and there is there's a lot of work that goes into this. Give us an idea of how what the process was to come up with this. We'll call it a design, and yeah, let's just start with that. How did you come up with this
that
particular
design has
design?
evolved. It's evolved big time since I first started doing them. When I first started, they were really basic. I didn't have the fundamentals down for carving. That's something I just basically had to learn from repetition and doing it over and over and over. And I got better at it, but my initial ones looked pretty much like Lincoln logs. Very basic, straight cuts. And just over the past year and a half of carving and designing, they just kind of flowed, and I've gotten a lot better with my curves and making them look more natural. Just something that I've got over time. I don't think there's anyone that can just sit down and show you, okay, do it like this. It's one of those things you just literally have to sit down and start doing it and learn yourself, trial and error.
And what do you use to carve?
I use a big angle grinder that does the majority of my carving, which is heavy, and I use it in one hand. I basically, like, here's a feeder right here. This is one of my twisted feeders. But basically, I'll hold this with my left hand, and I'm going over it with the grinder, and I'm turning this thing as I'm going. So that's how I do the actual lines that are in this. And then once I get the lines how I want, then I go over everything with a Dremel, and I smooth everything out. That's the final carving step. But they start out as just a regular 10-foot stick of PVC pipe that you find in Lowe's and Home Depot. And that's actually where I buy it. I've tried to buy in bulk, and I figured that it would probably be cheaper to buy in bulk with PVC, and that's not the case. I've contacted all the plumbing supply places here in our state, and the cheapest place I can find pipe is Lowe's, believe it or not.
Interesting.
So, well, at least it used to be. And the cost of PVC keeps going up, but it started at $11.67 a stick, and now I'm paying $26.39 for the same 10-foot stick.
Yeah, I'm finding that as well. So let's go over the progression. You came up with this idea. You wanted it to look better. You figured out how to do it. At what point did the idea come to you that this might be more than just you making one or two for yourself?
Well, I made it for myself, and I put them in my enclosures, and I just decided to send a picture to some of the admins in our group. I'm an admin on Chameleon Central on Facebook, and so I sent a picture to them. You know, I really wanted to hear from people that know quite a bit and see their feedback, and they all just gave me great positive feedback. So I really knew, based on the response, that I had something. I was on the right track.
Now, why did you want to create a business out of this?
Well, I retired from the Army, and after dealing with surgeries and stuff over the years, I wanted something. I needed an outlet, something, a hobby, something to keep me busy and keep me motivated and give me a reason to get up in the morning. When I started this company, it really jump-started passion in me, I guess, with no better term, but I just got motivated. I knew that this was a good product. I knew that it had potential. So I basically just had to take the chance and the gamble on myself.
Okay. And so what went into the thought process of actually going through the steps? Because we know ideas are cheap. Execution, not so much.
No, not so much in the execution. Everything out there is expensive. And one thing I had to do on top of building this feeder, I had to build a place to build the feeder. So I had to build a workshop, which I didn't have. I spent months scouring the internet, and I found a great deal on a building, bought the building. It's 12 foot by 32 feet inside, which is basically, it's a factory inside. you can see a little bit. This is my only non-chameleon related thing in this room is my music. I've got a couple of my keyboards up here. There, I have my shipping department over there. And if over on this side, you can see my paint section and my feeder section.
Wow.
So right now I keep on an average probably 140 or so feeders in stock.
How long did it take you to put all that together?
Well, it's actually still coming together. I'm kind of building the plane as I'm flying it. That's basically the best analogy I can give.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I started building these feeders. Really, I knew there was a market there, but I've had to figure out how to do this as I've done it. How to ship. Once I built these things, I had to figure out how do I ship them to people. So I had to learn how to go through the whole shipping process on USPS.com, which was a struggle, but and there's a learning curve to it. You know, using any new software, there's a learning curve. So trying to do that at the same time as starting this company, building feeders, and I'm also a breeder, by the way. So there's that, and that takes a lot of my time, which my days always start with chameleons and they end with chameleons.
Was there anything that came up unexpected that threatened to shut the whole thing down?
There have definitely been obstacles. So many just different little obstacles. One thing was, of all things, dust. I had no clue how much of an issue dust was going to be with PVC. When I first built this building, right where that keyboard is set up right there, I built a carving station. And I carved one piece of pipe in here. And I left this building. I came back about 30 minutes, and it looked like an 80s horror movie in here. All you could see was a cloud of white dust, and it was everywhere.
I knew where that was going when you started. Yeah, PVC. Yes.
Right then, I was like, okay, so we're going to change plans. We're not going to carve in this building. So my solution for that was to build a lean-to off of the back of this building. It's actually bigger. It's 16 by 32. It's enclosed. It's weatherproof, so it can be pouring down rain, and I can still be out there carving. Now, the bad thing with it are the elements. Here in South Carolina, it can get 115 degrees on a summer day, and I still have to go out there and carve. So I have fans in place. I have heaters out there for getting close to this time of year. It's just about time of year to start using my heater. I have propane heaters. So just stuff like that. Little things that you really don't think about until you have to deal with them.
So when you explain the process of going public, that first time you said, I've got my product, now it's time to go public. How did that happen? My memory's a little vague on that, but it seems like the first time I did anything about it, it was on Chameleon Central on Facebook. And I just showed a picture out there just to see what the response was going to be. And I just can't tell you how great the responses have been and how much I've appreciated the feedback. And I've gotten good feedback that I've actually made changes to my feeders also. Okay. I really enjoy, I'm a people person. I've always been a people person. And I like talking to people. I'm the type that I don't run into too many strangers. So, you know, I think that's helped. Dealing with customers, especially, I talk a lot on the phone with customers. One thing I do, because these feeders are so unique, this feeder doesn't look like any other feeder that I've made. And they're all like that. So because of that, I like to give people a choice. Not only do they pick out what color and size feeder they get, they actually pick out each of their individual feeders. You know, because one looks a little different than another. You might like one, but you might really not like another. So I give people the choice, and I contact and call every single customer, and make sure that not only do I send them a picture in a row, I'll send them a picture of it by itself and make sure it's exactly what they want before it leaves here, which really helps my customer service because I've had very little issues. I can count on one hand how many out of
out of over 1,000 that I've sold, how many people have had any kind of complaint or issue with their feeder, which has been awesome.
And so right now, is your only outreach one Facebook group?
No, I'm on probably 4 or 5 different groups. I'm on Chameleon Culture Club, Panther Chameleons, Veiled Chameleons. That might be it.
So
There's 4 or 5.
You've limited your marketing outreach to Facebook groups.
Yes, absolutely. And that might sound weird, but there's a reason I do that so far. And that reason is keeping up with production.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually had to shut production down 3 different times since I started because I got overwhelmed with orders. Mm-hmm. I had too many orders, and I knew it was going to take me a while to fill the orders. So I actually shut sales down 3 times. I've had to do that.
Okay. Well, then then you're doing as much marketing as you need to.
Right. I mean, really, at this point, I can't really take on any more groups than I have unless I hire some people. That's really the only option. The only way that I could get expanded out there more is to hire more people to do what I do.
Well, we have now come to the point in your entrepreneurial journey that many people do, is that you've exceeded, your orders are now exceeding your ability to fulfill them. And so the question that faces us all is, what now?
That's a good question. And it's going to depend on how everything plays out, basically, because I'm in the learning phase right now. Being a business owner is new. There's so many new things that come with that. So many things I have to learn and keep up with on top of carving, because carving takes so much of my time. I spend hours out there at a time carving, and I do it not every day, but probably every other or every third day I'm out there carving. If I'm not carving, I'm painting, sanding, dremeling, washing, cleaning feeders. There's a never ending need of things to be done. And when you're doing almost everything by yourself, which I'm not doing everything by myself, but I'm doing a lot of it by myself, I definitely have some help, and I couldn't do what I do without some of the help I get. I have people that do some of my prep work. A lot of sanding, prep painting, stuff like that takes that stuff away from me to have to do so that I can focus on the painting and the carving and the stuff that only I can do.
Yeah, and that's the problem whenever you're doing something that is artistic in nature. And really, these are works of art. This is not an industrial thing that is just functional and make a million of these things. This is a work of art. And the challenge with things like this is there's only one of you.
That's right.
So
unless I hire another artist or somebody that can do what I do with them, production is limited to me, basically. Okay. How many of those I can crank out, which is not fast. Each feeder takes me probably an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and 30 minutes. And that's solid working.
What is a realistic scaling strategy?
I don't know. That's a good question. One thing that I think that would be a possibility is if I got with a larger company. There's so many different things that could happen. I could sell the patent to a company. I could lease the patent to a company. I could try to get into a plastics company and manufacture these myself. So there's just really so many different ways it could go. And right now I've got my head down, tucked down, and I'm just carving away. So I'm it's unraveling as we're going through this. So it's definitely a work in progress.
And so the question from the other side is, do you feel like you need to scale up? Is this size that you're at right now satisfying to you? Is this what you need?
It's not ultimately what I would like, because these things take me so long to make. They're at a price point which I feel like it's at the lowest price point that it could possibly be, and still have people interested in buying them. But it's really, I'm not making money on these. not much. When you look at all of the manufacturing costs, how much all the PVC and the plastics have gone up, my price has stayed the same. So it's still $49.95, but my plastic is costing me almost 3 times what it cost me 6 months ago to make these. So I'm going to get to a point where either the prices are going to have to come down on my supplies, or I'm going to have to raise my price on the feeders. It's just simple math. Otherwise, I'm going to be basically making these and paying people to take them from me.
Yes.
Which it's not good for long-term business success. But it is a fine line. If I had it my way, these things would cost $29.95.
Yeah.
And they would be in every cage in the country. But the only way to do that would be to do mass production, would be injection molding probably. And then you lose the individuality of the feeders.
Yep.
Then they're no longer hand carved and hand painted. Right. Yep. So what do I do? Do I charge $90 for a feeder and make a profit, or do I keep them at $49.95 and stay afloat, which is what I'm doing right now? And for now, it's satisfying for me. I enjoy making them. I can't tell you how much I love seeing pictures that I get sent to me every day by customers with chameleons, sleeping in them, climbing on them. They love these things. And they've gotten to where most owners, their chameleons know where the food comes from. Yep. And they're sitting right there at the feeder waiting for it. So it's adorable. I love it. And I love that I'm able to give a product that actually helps chameleons. And I don't know if you're aware of it, but I also make and sell the special needs feeder chameleon, the chameleon feeder. Have you seen those?
I've seen a picture of those. Yes.
Those I designed for chameleons who can't use their tongues, which, as you know, it's surprising how many chameleons out there cannot use their tongues.
Yeah. The tongue is a complex organ, and
it is. There could be
sometimes
eye
fails.
Issues, tongue injuries, so many things, supplement issues, so many things that could cause those. But whatever the cause is, the feeders that I make for them, they work great for. They're not designed for crickets, but they're designed for dubias and superworms, other things that you'd be feeding your chameleon. They're not going to jump out of. But it's actually just used like a cup that you hold.
You've reached a level a lot of people, in fact, I've reached this level where the orders have exceeded your ability to supply. And so now you've actually had to cut down on sales.
Right.
And the question when people, and this is, I interview a lot of people, and this is common to where, okay, we've got something, it's starting to take off, but now it's gone beyond what we can take care of in our current structure. And so the question comes up, do we go to a different structure? And what does that mean? Because there are consequences to
absolutely,
to growing. And I've had to face those consequences. I mean, do I go to China?
Right.
And I
because there's so many things you have to look at. You have to look at how much control am I losing by giving this to another company?
And the product
changes. One of the big things. Yes.
What made
and then you don't have
special?
to say so of what that final product looks like.
This is a piece of art, a work of art, and that is what is special about this. If you injection mold this, yes, it'll look natural, but you've lost something incredibly special about it. And
they wouldn't be the same.
And nobody right now can say what that means, because yes, I can guarantee you will sell more of them at $29.99, but you have lost something special about it. And the question is, is what's special about this? Is that what is making it fulfilling to you?
To me, what makes it fulfilling is
how will you feel about it, business?
Well, for me, I really enjoy the art aspect of it. As you see the keyboard sitting over there, I've always been into art. I've been an artist. I've been a musician since I was 3. I started playing piano. So art has always been in my life, always been there. And to me, this is just another form of art. It's just something else I'm doing. I used to do portrait drawings on the weekends, just to make a little extra money, but I was in the same dilemma with that. I was charging $40 for a portrait that would take me 12 to 13 hours to draw. So it was sustainable. I did it on a weekend, mostly just for fun and, and as a hobby, because I enjoyed it. And I thought it was cool that people were like, here's some money. And I'm thinking, wow, I'm getting paid to draw, even though, I wasn't even making minimum wage. So you really just have to look at it like that. With this, these are art. The feeders are definitely art. They're hand carved, hand painted. I don't know. It's just, to me, I enjoy doing the carving and I enjoy doing the painting. It's fulfilling.
If you take the next step and grow to the point where you now can mass produce it, is it still the business that you want to spend your life doing?
I don't think so. One other solution would be for me to hire other people that can carve. And to me, that would be, I would enjoy that, because that would free me up to do more of the business end of it. But then I could still go out there and carve when I want to carve. I could still paint when I want to paint. But a lot of the workload I could put on other people for them to be able to do what I was doing so that I can help grow the business. That would really be the only other way, would be for me to take over the business end of it, focus on that, and have other people doing the work and actually building the feeders. And if I did that, I would still have to have a hands-on, I'd be the QC.
Yeah.
They would all have to pass my inspection. And I'm like that now. I am very detail oriented when it comes to these feeders. I do have somewhat of a background in manufacturing from when I was a teenager. I worked in a computer plant where we manufactured wiring harnesses for supercomputers. So I have a little bit of background when it comes to, factory assembly line type stuff, which I implemented when I built this building and set it up how I did.
Okay. Do you have any pressure to grow? And it really comes down to, is this business at this point profitable enough that you can stay at this level until you decide you want to grow?
That's a good question. And I really don't know the answer at this point. The business is still too new, and I'm still learning every day about this and that, and learning how much I don't know. That's the other thing about being a business owner.
Oh my goodness. The amount of
every
growth.
day I get to learn how much I don't know.
And
so it's a challenge.
And we have these decisions all the time, and nobody knows what the right answer is until you just make a decision, do it, and see what happens. And then you can look back and know if it was the right decision or not.
That's right. It's either going to work out or it's not, and you repeat it or you don't. I mean,
Jim,
that's life.
Yeah, you are you are in the middle of it, and this is wonderful to share. And what would you say to people, entrepreneurs out there who are looking to start, and from where you are right now, what advice would you give them?
The first thing I would give is find out what's needed, because just like anything, any kind of invention, you're filling a need. There's a problem and there's a solution. So I would say try to focus on something that's an issue, or something that they're passionate about. And if it's something good, spread it out to people and get other people's feedback, because that means a lot. You can learn a lot from sharing your ideas. Having one person think about something versus 20 people think about something, you're going to get way more ideas and more sustainable things that'll come out of sharing with other people and getting their feedback. So that's the first thing I would say, is get feedback. But again, with that, you would have to be careful. You don't want to just send your ideas out to anybody, because if you send it out to the wrong person, of course, it could get in the wrong hands, and then you lose your idea. So,
well, you mentioned a patent.
Find people that you could trust and talk to them. I did go through the patent process, and there was 2 reasons I wanted to do that. one, I wanted to protect myself because I've heard of so many stories, I'm sure everybody has, of the big man coming in and squashing the little guy, taking their ideas, and the next thing you know, you're out of business. So I didn't want that to happen. I didn't want a big company to be able to come in, take the idea, and run with it, and I'm just sitting there like, what happened? So that was number one. The second reason I wanted to get a patent was in the event that I ever want to stop making these and I want to sell the idea or lease the idea to somebody else to make, that would give me that option.
Very smart.
But I'll tell you one thing, a patent is not cheap. There's nothing cheap about a patent. Thank goodness for bank loans. I'll say that.
Yeah. When I got my patent, it was, I hired an attorney, a good attorney. Actually, I have an interview with that attorney, and I am so glad that I did because he was able to smooth out some assumptions that the patent office made that were going to cause me problems. And so it was definitely worth it, but it cost some money to do it.
It's not something you can do by yourself. Not if you want to be successful and have it come back approved. You have to get a patent attorney. So, and patent attorneys are not cheap.
Not the good ones.
I think the rate of mine is $375 an hour. So it doesn't take long at all.
So what are your next steps for growth?
Basically, I'm still in the building process. I need to finish building this building that you can see the bare wall behind me. This wall needs to get painted.
Oh, it looks
These
rustic.
walls
I like
need
it.
to get painted. Well, some of it is painted, but a lot of this is still rough and it's just, framed in and stuff. So I need to finish the inside of this. Just a lot of little things like that. Working out of my outside workshop, I need to make a lot of improvements. I need to try to make it a little better weatherproof for the elements here. It is weatherproof, but it still gets hot and it still gets cold. So that's something I fight here in South Carolina with being outside is the elements.
Okay.
Trying to keep them out.
All right. And marketing wise, you good with your website and your Facebook outreach?
No, the website was a huge help. I can't even tell you how it changed my life because prior to the website, I spent all day, every day on my phone. I would take orders over the phone, message people. Every person had the same questions. How big is it? How do you attach it? All the same questions. And I spent all day. I felt like a broken record, but I would literally go through this with every customer. Even from the beginning, I was sending them pictures and they were choosing their feeders from day one. That's something I've always done. So, and I really believe in customer service. I believe if you treat people the way you want to be treated, it comes back to you. So
yes,
I always try to treat my customers like I would want to be treated. And I'm fast with responses. If somebody messages, unless I'm in the middle of carving or something, I usually respond right back to people.
Okay.
So I try to make myself accessible, which at times is hard because I'll be in the back and I'll have a respirator on. I'll have my safety glasses, my hearing protection, and the phone rings. And I have gloves on. So the phone rings and I'm taking all this stuff off, trying to get to the phone. And then by the time I get to it, it stops ringing. Or we calling you about your car insurance.
Yeah,
it's
right.
one of those. So, that's a challenge, but yeah.
All right, Jim, I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing this point in your entrepreneurial journey. We can all see ourselves there at some point, and I really thank you for sharing so openly and honestly.
Oh, well, thanks so much for having me on. It's been a blast.
Thank you for joining me and Jim here today. If you'd like to know more information about Sunset Chameleons and the Log Lunch Feeder, then go to sunsetchameleons.com, and there you'll find all the information you need. Have a great day. This is Bill Strand signing off. I'll see you next time.